NHRD Pune YouTube channel. I'm Neena Kamal with the latest episode of PeoplePoint. Today's our guest, Mr. Anand Khot, is the CHRO of Pharmarack. Anand brings with him 25 years of HR experience in Indian as well as multinational organizations like IBM, Dell, Patni, which is now known as Capgemini. Anand has worked in Indian and overseas markets in areas like organizational restructuring, performance management, talent management, and mergers and acquisitions. Apart from being a very seasoned leader who's driven towards creating engaged workplaces, Anand is also driven to build volunteering culture where one looks beyond oneself and starts contributing towards greater communities. He himself has been part of many volunteering projects, but two require special mention. One is he was the NHRD president, NHRD Pune chapter president, and he has been associated with NHRD since 2016. Um, Another thing is that he was the volunteer games maker for London Olympics and Paralympics in 2012. It's our absolute pleasure to welcome you, Anand. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks a lot, Neena. Happy to be with you this morning and looking forward to our engaging conversation on the People Point.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anand. So, Anand, I want to ask you, how do you see next few years of HR? What are some of the trends you think will become very critical from HR point of view?
Sure, Neena. We had agreed that you will not ask difficult questions, but looks like you want to start with the first one itself. But I think in my opinion, the key trend, the one, if we want to break the trend within let's say next 2 to 3 years versus up to 2030, then I would say that next couple of years, creating engaged workforce in the hybrid environment would be the first and the foremost one in many industries across the world. Definitely one important trend. The trend which has also taken a good momentum in HR function has been the data-driven HR organizations, right, across various industries as well. So HR analytics would be the second trend for the immediate, up to 3 years or so. And we also noticed that from last about 4 years or so, there has been good focus on movement from employee engagement to employee experience, and also using design thinking or design principles while creating organization practices and procedures. So I believe that these three trends would be for the next 3 years. But as we go beyond 3 years to about 2030, the deeper understanding of HR analytics, usage of artificial intelligence and machine learning in people-centric practices. We all of us are aware that customer-centric behavior for organization has been there and it has improved last few years. But how employee-centric policies and procedures, so which means almost a customized way of engaging each individual at workplace would be something which will catch up, because today if you hear about things like moonlighting and other challenges, those issues are coming because unlike machines which can do many things, human beings are multidimensional. Their abilities and potential is much beyond complex machines, and by virtue of that, each individual wants to bring themselves, their whole sum, to the workplace, and the workplace have to now customize the overall offering for an individual, where the whole self is engaged at workplace. And I think those are the complexities, because between, let's say, 2025 to 2030, there will be a great reality of human beings working with let's say humanoids, the human beings working in the format of regular full-time employees. They'll be working in the format of fixed-term contractors, gig workers. So all those combination permutations would kind of expect HR professionals to look at creating almost individual-centric ecosystems where the whole self can be fully deployed, and the maximum potential of the workforce can be brought to the table to add value to the top line and bottom line of the business. I believe this is what we need to keep in mind when it comes to trends between next 3 years to next 10 years. I hope that gives you some perspective of, you know,
This
what
is
HR needs to be aware and aligned, in the near future.
this is so brilliant. I mean, you nailed it. Whatever I've been reading, I realized that one of the thing is that at this, I mean, HR analytics and data is taking a center stage, but at the same time, for HR professionals now, it is going to be a real challenge where we use that to our advantage, but at the same time, not lose focus that we have to create employee experience, which is very individual centric. I mean, that is going to be one of the most crucial things.
That's correct. That's correct.
So many realities are changing around us. I mean, COVID actually accelerated our learning to the T. I mean, everything, right from the way we work, where we work, everything has changed. All these changing realities, how do you think businesses need to adapt to this? And what would HR's value proposition in these changing times?
So obviously, we don't have a silver bullet to this answer. I think a lot of the industry veterans and gurus, as well as the millennials and the subsequent generations, are trying to find solution together. So I won't claim to state that I know the answer, but I will share my perspectives about as to what businesses need to think about, and along with that, what HR needs to think about. So I think many a times the analogy was used that we are we are kind of parallel elements in the organization, with respect to HR and business, and then one plays sometimes the role of a support, sometimes the role of an advisor, sometimes the role of a conscience keeper. In my opinion, with the changing realities and COVID, and the work becoming more flatter by virtue of digitization, the organizational gaps with respect to hierarchies collapsing significantly. The workforce is becoming more demanding, expecting greater transparency. Under all of these circumstances, I think a co-creative thought process between business and HR, in my opinion, would be the most constructive way of creating that future which is ahead of us. Because I think we have received sufficient criticism about thinking things without realizing the business context. And I think one can also state that at times the business may not be fully cognizant about some of the HR/people implications while coming up with certain decisions. And I think if you see the recent frenzies at social media and stuff, all of this is fairly evident, for us to refer to, and hence both parties not necessarily keeping a wide gap in coming up with solutions
Yes.
would be the best approach, because the pitfalls which one may experience in due course, and I think the chances of correcting the situation is very limited, right? The businesses are stretched with respect to profitability, with respect to resources. So you don't have a lot of time and resources to make errors and make amendments, and hence if you are able to, it's okay to maybe take a pause, come together, co-create with key stakeholders, and then the other benefit of that co-creation approach, Nina, would also be that you are able to align people with their commitments much ahead, in the execution process, as compared to, you would notice in many complex projects that alignment itself takes significant amount of time and resources before you are able to really make a meaningful change in the organization. So I
Very
would say the business and HR to uh, kind of drop the guards with respect to their positions, and for the sake of better word, egos, and get on to a co-creative process where alignments are faster, execution is smoother, and then the impact on the top line and bottom line is much richer in due course. That's my perspective.
That is very well said, Anand. Very introspective thoughts you have shared. Thank you. So, Anand, from your experience, can you share some examples of practices or some of the things which HR can do uh, to achieve some of these things, like alignment and
Yeah. So I think many projects in the volunteering world as well as in the organization. But for the purpose of confidentiality, we will not refer to something which is very identifiable to the organization.
absolutely.
But at least in my experience, let's take an example of restructuring.
Okay.
Right, restructuring projects generally come with a lot of time pressure and at times with the cost pressure. So, in my experiences, whenever we had this sort of a situation to come in, um, I have tried to work with the business leader in understanding the true reality of the business, because that helps you then define, how to go about restructuring. Because most of the time, the biggest impacted party in the restructuring is obviously the business, profitability or the growth expectations. But
Yes.
the second biggest impact is the human beings, and
Mm.
not only the employees themselves, but the associated impact on the family and the extended impact in the community and whatnot. So discussing those aspects openly, going through the detailing of the constituents who are impacted. Uh, at times, it has also helped in having a good grassroots level knowledge about the employees and their strength, weaknesses, and their ability to adapt in the changing environment. And when you start putting a solution together under these circumstances, even though it's a restructuring and it's going to impact few lives, you are able to minimize the impact and achieve both objectives of the business objectives as well as the people centric objectives. And I'm glad to state that at times we have had situations where the employees who were impacted and who were communicated in a very transparent and empathetic manner, uh, where one would expect that they would retaliate and raise concerns, but they in fact came forward thanking us,
Yes.
stating that because of the way you communicated, because of the way you shared some of the ground realities, it helped us make certain decisions which we were procrastinating for a fair bit of time, and it's going to channelize our life forward from here in a much better way. Obviously, there will be some amount of adjustment the employees and their families will need to do,
Yes.
but the long term future and the long term career after that particular event, which otherwise is generally seen as a negative and at times can be seen as a catastrophic event, can be turned around to an event which is fairly constructive with minimal disruption to the people involved. And
Very
it helps if you have the business context, if you have the good understanding of the people, and identifying the right talent which needs to be nudged, so to say, for making certain decisions which they may have been stopping themselves. So I think that's one example, I believe, on the restructuring side, which is a complex piece.
yes.
uh, if we have time, I can talk about one more example from merger and acquisitions,
Yes.
where
Please go.
most of the time in mergers and acquisitions, there is some amount of insecurity, anxiety. At times, there is a experience of a hostile behavior as well, right? Because these are things which are not necessarily very friendly in the initial phases, and there the intention is to be friendly, but the perception could be different, and individual styles, because the two organizations coming together, the culture can be very different, and hence how they perceive each other and how they perceive each other through their communication can be very different. So in those circumstances, I think again, being transparent, being empathetic, being individualistic, because let's say if a few hundred people are being transitioned, you can't necessarily say that because you are coming from XYZ company, this is how we're going to treat you. Yes, there will be a larger framework within which the transition will happen, But within that larger framework, we need to get to the individual level impact analysis. And that impact analysis should not be only restricted towards the compensation benefit or designation alignment or location related element, which are generally the so-called hygiene elements of integration.
True.
But the elements which are related to the aspirations of the individuals, the psyche within which this individual is considering this particular transition. Because in the change curve, you will always find that there are many employees who are already at the left hand side of the change curve, a good amount of them at the mid, and a good amount of them towards the right. Through the initial engagement, if you are able to identify and spot psychologically or emotionally where they stand on the change curve, you are able to then develop the individual strategies and individual communication plans to those folks who are potentially impacted through the merger. And depending on where they are and you align your communication, you start seeing a lot of resonance coming in.
Very,
A lot of people who generally have resistance initially, if you know and you acknowledge that the resistance is a very natural thing as what they have, all
yeah,
of a sudden you see those people opening their hearts and mind to understand what this change means for them, and if some people have had aspirations to operate or take their career in a certain way, uh, and if you are able to tell them that this particular merger is exactly going to do that, but you were not aware till yesterday or this morning, but now I'm explaining it to you that if this is what you're looking for, this M&A situation has kind of happened for you, and your interests are being protected. All of a sudden you see a lot of resonance and change or acceptance to that change. But there'll also be many people who are very stubborn with respect to their thought process, and one needs to be willing to have multiple interactions with them
yeah,
and help them connect with people who they believe, instead of just trying to toe the line of either the policies, procedures, or the broken records. And I think when you give so-called options to people in choosing in M&A situation as well, it helps. Obviously, you can't leave the so-called running train when it comes to delivering the business and stuff like that. But when they have option with timelines, for example, yes, you may not be appreciative of this particular transition, but there is a dependency on you for, let's say, next 15 months, and we would like you to embrace this change for this period of time. No obligations post that, but we'll be happy to have a coffee to see if you still believe in the vision of the future or not. And if things have changed at either end, we can reconcile ourselves. I think that gives a lot of confidence to people in accepting such large changes. Most of the time when the smaller entities get acquired by large organizations, employees do tend to see that I always wanted to work in a boutique or a startup sort of an environment, and now I'm going to become a part of a big conglomerate. I never wanted to do that. So I think giving them the right perspectives of how the culture of the organization is and how that individual's dreams can still be fulfilled in the conglomerate, helps them to take the right decisions. Those are two examples I thought I'll share with you.
brilliant. I feel that one thing HR can do is, create a space where employees can ask questions, because see, everybody. First thing we have to accept is we are dealing with adults, and the way we look at the situation and we understand it, we analyze it, our employees are also going to do that.
Correct.
They're going to have a fair idea about what is going on, what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Most of the times, the frustration comes out of the fact that we deny them that space where we show understanding that, okay, they might understand what the situation is and they might have some questions, they might have some reactions. So I think even having that understanding will help HR in a very good way.
Totally, totally. I think in those conversations there should never be a competitive thought process of who is more intelligent or who is aware about something. I think the most important element of that conversation is to provide the psychological safety. And I would say from a HR leadership perspective, provide that psychological safety to the HR person who is handling that conversation as well. Because most of these conversations are not necessarily done by the CHROs or the HR heads.
Yeah.
In depending on the size of the transaction, even many of your entry level HR professionals would be conducting those conversations, and they are carrying a lot of important responsibility on their shoulders. So if the HR leadership provides and the business leadership provides the psychological safety to that HR professional as well, it makes a lot of difference, because at times you notice that even HR is fairly under pressure and hence wanting to operate in a certain manner, which instead of solving the problem creates more complex problem.
My God, this reminds me of my early uh, experiences of HRBP, where I was given a list of 30 employees in another branch where I had to go and either relocate them or to fire them. And I remember how much more than my, actually in that situation, more than my HR boss, my business leaders really supported me, my MD, and it really made a huge difference. So, what you say, I can totally uh, agree to that.
Get to that. Okay, excellent.
So
I hope the difficult questions are now slowing down, or they're not.
now we are getting into a segment called rapid musings. So
Okay,
these are some quick questions where um, quick answers are expected.
sure.
So
Let's go for that.
great. So my first question to you is, what is the topmost HR deliverable in your mind?
Right talent at the right place at the right price.
Right price. That's great.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
thank you.
What do you think you consider as your favorite HR book or people book for that matter?
HR Here and Now by Vijay Rao. Coincidentally, he's our mentor and the one who we look after to, from the point of view of the best practices he created in India. So he, along with Ganesh and one more person, a book called HR Here and Now.
Okay. I have had a personal privilege to have met Mr. Rao, so I know
Wow,
totally resonate with
small world.
that. Your favorite people mantra?
Uh, be in a moment.
Be in the moment. So simple,
Yeah.
profound, very profound, very nice. What would be the most crucial HR skill going forward?
Data science.
Data science.
Yes.
Yes, really?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Okay, next question. Who's your favorite or who's your professional role model?
Dr. APJ Abul Kalam.
Oh my God. Okay, that's nice. Can you just quickly tell us what do you learn from? What did you learn from?
I think this is a each human being have immense potential, and he has exemplified that beyond one can imagine. Somebody coming from humble beginning, having not only the dreams but now having memories to have fulfilled that dream, and then getting on to becoming the head of our space program, and then becoming the president of the country. And then the way, it's not only how he lived his life, the way he had that last day when he was in the academic institute where he lost his life. So literally every ounce of his talent and skill he deployed for the betterment of the humanity. I think that's what really makes him the role model, evergreen role model for me.
Very true. And he inspired people without even ever saying that I'm making an effort to inspire someone. He was just
Yeah,
there and he inspired.
somebody see, I mean, we are used to people making use of the authority to do stuff, right? And I think he was the true influencer in many ways, and leading by example. So all the good things we look for in leaders, I think he had in multiples of all of that, and more.
Perfect. Perfect. Anand, it was truly a learning experience for me today to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
Any parting words?
No, I just wanted to also call out that recently I came across a book by the name Atomic Habit by James Clear. I would highly recommend our listeners to kind of take a look at it. It's very practical book, and I think in today's time, when we have immense distractions around us, a book like that really helps you stay on track.
Fabulous,
And
fabulous.
I want to wish you well as the People Point initiative well.
Yes,
Pune chapter has been doing exceedingly well over last few years and have a great agenda ahead. So I'm sure under your leadership, Aman's leadership, and so many others who are contributing, will take NHRD into the next height.
fantastic. Tathastu to that. Thank you so much, Anand. Thank you. Uh,
Thank you. Have
thank
a
you.
great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you to our audience today for watching this brilliant episode. And please share, subscribe, and let us know how you find these conversations. Thank you so much. Till the next episode. Bye.